episode of Genre Grinder. It's been a long year. It's been a long month. I know for me personally, between my own podcast, other people's podcasts, various Halloween-themed articles and helpful hints, it was a long month. So, I also got another long thing coming up in December with Patrick. So I thought that, it'd be nice to take it down a notch, relax a little, talk about something fun, talk with someone who I happen to live with. Don't have to worry with the Zoom calls or the Google calls. Don't have to deal with editing together all the stuff after the fact. It's all in one place. So today, I'm with my girlfriend, Kristine Fisher. Say hello, Kristine.
Hello, Kristine.
And, that's good. And we're going to be talking about slapstick, silent era slapstick.
Oh, excuse me.
Oh, yeah, that was too loud for silent era. So this is something that Kristine's a big fan of silent movies in general, but I think that the comedies tend to be the thing that it's kind of her, quote, fandom.
Yeah, if it could be a collegiate major, I would major in silent film.
So I always have known, well, not always, but I've long known the silent horror movies. I knew some of these movies because they used to play them on Turner Classic Movies or AMC or Comedy Central on Sundays when I was younger. So I've always been aware of them, and I know I like them, but I don't think until the two of us started dating that I really started trying to collect them and think about them more critically.
That's really how I started into it, too. It was basically AMC during the mornings. I don't know if it was Sunday for sure, but definitely AMC, cultivated a love for silent film in me.
I think it was Sundays because I think that there were no cartoons on.
Correct.
And that's why I was watching them.
It was either 700 Club or silent comedies.
Yeah.
Your choice.
And then the stuff that I guess we'll go into at the very end just for a minute, but yeah, the other stuff that those channels helped me get into was the just post silent era stuff, like Marx Brothers movies, and then Abbott and Costello movies, which have roots in silent stuff. But
they have roots in vaudeville for sure.
Right. So yeah, why don't you explain to us as my expert today, and what exactly slapstick means and what kind of movies are we going to be talking about?
Well, the origin of the term slapstick is taken from history in French, Italian, or European traveling theater, or commedia dell'arte, as the Italians say, and involving a traveling troupe of actors or comedians or people who just wanted to follow along like a troupe, like a circus. They go from town to town doing, either very organized or very unorganized skits. And to get a quick laugh from the yokels or the townspeople, they would stage mock foot chases throughout the village. And they would make silly sounds, and people, or the actors eventually found out, people really like it when we hit someone behind or the ass or the rear. That item was known as a slapstick or a bataccio. And that's where the origin of the term slapstick comes from, because it creates such a thwack, such a sound that's like a slapstick. That's what its purpose is. And in the future, slapstick in the form of traveling theater would eventually migrate to a more like steady traveling route of vaudeville chains or circuits, and music hall in Europe especially.
And then vaudeville was something that really picked up in America in the late 1800s.
Yes, and then definitely in the early 1900s, and then people filtered from the vaudeville circuit into California or film production companies or studios in New York or New Jersey, somewhere in the Midwest. Not that many were well known, but it's eventually started to crop up in California and matriculate through there.
And that was and in vaudeville wasn't just the comedy acts. There was also like stand up, right?
Stand up, freak shows,
dance, military related things. Orators were a big one.
I think News of the World with Tom Hanks is going to come up pretty soon as far as a movie. And he's basically a traveling orator who is outside of the circuit. He just travels on his own from town to town.
Okay. So it's sort of the first kind of movies in a certain sense. I guess
Right.
I guess as far as me being a horror fan, I always think of Grand Guignol as like the basis for horror movies.
Right. But even before that, there would be like stage shows that would involve horror or trying to fool audience or theater goers into thinking something terrible was going on. Vaudeville did that, but did that on the road. They didn't stick to a solid stage for very long. They pulled up stakes and they went from town to town. Some towns that didn't even see a circus, they went there. So eventually, like people in the Midwest or people who were moving out to live in the West or the West Coast, they would eventually get around to seeing a show because it would come to them.
And all they really needed was a stage.
A stage or like vaudeville museums were a thing too, where unfortunately it's a lot like a sex theater, where the door would come up if you put in a quarter or however much amount of money. They would do a little skit, and then the door would come down again, or the curtains would close. And they wouldn't perform again. They wouldn't perform their skit again until someone put in another quarter. So I think those were dime museums or Nickelodeons were films, but they were taken from the fact that you could insert a coin and get entertainment.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say Nickelodeons, and then that was like the original porn was little Nickelodeon
films, a lot of fun stuff.
things.
Oh yeah.
And because these movies are so old, a lot of them are just gone. They just don't exist. They weren't. The celluloid itself couldn't survive, and nobody was going out of their way to preserve.
Historians, no.
It was considered, pretty trashy entertainment. I assume.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't last very long. I mean, the clips we ourselves watched were no longer than 20 minutes. Yeah, and you could compile a bunch and have a full day's going out to theater if that's what you did during the teens and 20s before the advent of film and full-length features. So yeah, they were built to be short, and probably due to their short length, the film quality was awful.
Yeah, I played the game Red Dead Redemption 2 not too long ago, and there's actually multiple options for silent film theater, like short cartoons, and then when you get to the bigger city, they actually have a vaudeville theater and stuff. Yeah.
I enjoyed those mightily.
Yeah, that was really cute. I apologize. I can hear the rain outside on the track when I'm recording it right now, and that's going to be too hard for me to cut out.
So I don't
Yeah.
deal with it.
So, but before we really get into it, Kristine overheard me doing my Directors Club podcast last month and really liked the idea of what did we watch this week, and thought since we've been kind of cooped up together throughout this whole COVID thing, that we would kind of quickly talk about some of the things we as a couple tried to either watch or make each other watch. My big thing that I did, is I had a big pile of movies that I had either bought myself or gotten for gifts over the years.
Yes.
And I finally
Watch pile.
Yeah, it was huge, and I finally knocked that down.
Yeah.
By making myself actually sit
The
and watch
spines of
things.
those films looked me in the eye every time I walked by, like, you could be watching us right now. But the pandemic, freed up a bunch of time. So.
And there were some I could make you watch. Most recently for Halloween, I decided I wanted to watch a bunch of late 50s, early 60s Japanese horror movies, and I have a couple of those.
A lot of samurai issues.
Yeah.
A lot of folk tales. That was awesome.
Yeah, and I knew you would like the folktale type stuff, so yeah, we watched some on the Criterion Channel and some that I just happened to own. Basically, we ran out everything Criterion has in the realms of Japanese horror from that era.
Yes.
We wrung it dry. Excuse me. And what else did I try to make you watch?
Early on, we had an agreement or a bond or a non-shaking of hands promise to watch all the James Bonds. How far did we get? 4 or 5?
I think we made it into only. I think we the Man with the Golden Gun is the last one we watched, so we didn't make it very far into even Roger Moore's. Personally, I really don't like most of the Roger Moore movies. I think that there's been a sort of revival look back. Like, I think they were considered kind of garbage, but now people sort of like them and appreciate them.
Cheesy.
But they're just always really boring for me. So
I think the point where we dropped off was Octopussy.
No, we didn't make it that far.
We didn't.
That was still like 2 down the line.
2 more movies.
In fact, I can't remember which one comes after Goldfinger, but I want to, or Goldfinger, Man with the Golden Gun, but I want to say it was actually one of the good ones, and we just haven't gotten to it yet. But well, you liked From Russia with Love and
I
Gold.
certainly did.
Yeah, you liked the good ones, basically.
Yeah, I like the idea of the military police being involved on an M5 mission. That was interesting to me.
Yeah. And then what other, like?
We are gonna watch some Ghibli movies.
Yeah, we never did get around to that.
No, not really. The Criterion Olympics, when you're talking about Criterion.
That's right. Yeah, because there were no sports.
Correct.
And Kristine really likes sports, and since we've been together, I pay more attention to sports. I hadn't since I was like a teenager.
Correct.
And Criterion has all these What are they? Bud
Greenspan.
Bud Greenspan.
And his brother.
And his brother does the
Narration.
The narration. They're these documentaries. I think the first one is 70. 72 or something. I can't remember where it starts, but one of they basically cover the Olympic years, the majority of the events, and they're like 4-hour long movies.
It's very dramatic.
And that was a way to watch sports and a movie.
Yes.
And yeah, because they're so long, we would barely get through like half of one.
Do you remember what we did to eventually start watching those?
No.
When the point where we realized there was going to be no new sports at all.
Yeah.
We had rung out ESPN The Ocho.
Oh yeah, we were watching The Ocho.
We watched sign spinning. We watched watermelon or cherry pits spitting.
Yeah.
We watched a greased slide climbing thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was crazy. That was the absolute worst.
A lot of those sound like more fun than they end up being.
Yeah. Yeah, it all depends on the presentation, the announcements. A lot of those happened at state fairs for some reason, or off off strip from Las Vegas, like convention center type things. That's right. There was like ping pong or like air guitar and juggling, full contact juggling.
Full contact juggling where you have to try to knock. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and it just didn't have the same thrill. And most of the Olympic ones were from years. We were both born in 1980. Years that we were at least somewhat aware of the world around us.
Sports.
Yeah. So I remembered certain things from them. Yeah, that was fun.
We caught up on some anime. Then we resorted to the 1001 movies to see before you die.
Oh, yeah. We didn't get very far.
We watched a few things.
Yeah. Again, the Criterion Channel helped there, but I own quite a few of them. And there was, for a while, the Turner Classic Movies, but they actually put stuff on HBO Max now, so there's some good stuff there. I really liked watching the Bubsy Berkeley stuff, which is, that's just out of the silent era.
Correct. Netflix happened to drop a lot of original and new series that I really picked up and liked. The big, blazing, all-time favorite one for me now is Yuri's Bed and Breakfast, or Yuri's Homestay from South Korea.
Right. It's this reality show where this couple that's famous musicians in Korea run a bed and breakfast with another famous musician as a performing artist
as a house servant or
as help.
Yeah.
And it's cute.
I was so surprised to see him.
Yeah. Usually I didn't watch all of that. But yeah, you watched most of that.
It was so cozy and nice. Then the British Bake Off came on. Then we started to, that's right, Umbrella Academy came back. Lovecraft Country premiered. Fargo came back. I started really getting into Formula One. Every other Sunday or so, it would come up with a new race. Stanley Cup.
The Stanley Cup was fun.
Yeah, it was.
Though every time I was rooting for a team, they lost for the most part.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Yeah. got a new closeness to Gritty during the games and during the elections.
Yeah, that was true. Gritty became like the mascot for the end of the elections there.
Yeah. And then eventually I started watching football again.
I think the only movies we actually spent money on because was Bill and Ted Face the Music and The Invisible Man.
That's right.
I think all the rest ended up on some service we already had. But they were good.
Or we drew from the material that we had as far as Blu-rays.
Yeah, I have like 1,000 Blu-rays, and
Yep. May as well get to watching those.
some of them I know she'll hate, but so yeah, that's what we watched this year instead of this week. So just in case they have a copyright on what did we watch this week. So getting into it, we kind of tried to start with the Keystone stuff.
We did. That's right.
Which is Keystone Cops is the one I think most people know because it became kind of an idiom in itself. That when people are bad at something, they're the Keystone Cops.
They're bumbling. They have a hard time gaining speed, cohesion as a group, and it just comes off really unprofessional.
Yeah, like if you're at a restaurant and everybody keeps dropping the food, or like the wait staff keeps tripping over each other, you'd say it's the Keystone Cops of wait staff.
Yes.
It's like it's one of those idioms that you don't even know where it comes from. You just, yeah. And it did survive into the sound era because there were Evan and Costello.
Correct. They picked it up.
Yeah.
As being someone they meet.
Right.
The Keystone Cops was developed by Keystone Pictures, which was originated by Max Sennett. Max Sennett started out Triangle Films, which is the production company of a few of the movies we're watching. And Max Sennett eventually de-evolved into Max Sennett Corporation, and then his career failed. That turned out to be the common habit for actors or producers to create their own production company and have their movies distributed by a big studio.
And that was Chaplin was the one who was very successful at that, correct?
Yes, because not only that, he had his own studio with United Artists,
right.
with Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks.
So we ended up fewer. I guess a lot of these movies just don't exist anymore. But there's some Keystone Cops on YouTube. We watched one that was apparently supposed to be one of the original ones, which was the Bangville Police.
They introduced the Keystone Cops.
Which from 1913, so this is more than 100 years old at this point.
There only really seem to be 2 cops, whereas there's supposed to be like 7 of them.
I think, this was like an early
You can fit
one.
2 people in a car. You can't fit 7 to 9 people in a car.
I think that's the image most people have of the Keystone Cops is them, too many of them on a car moving at fast speed.
Hanging on during a really long curve.
And they'll take a curve and some of them will fall off. Bangville Police, which I like, it was a rare movie that could be its own porn parody without changing the title. Directed by Harry Lehrman. Do we know anything about Harry Lehrman?
Sure don't.
No, he was just probably in the system.
Yes.
The Keystone System. And the Keystone System produced basically everybody we're going to talk about throughout this.
Just about, except for Harold Lloyd.
Yeah, except for one. So the idea I got from these really, really early slapstick things is obviously the vaudeville-ness of him.
Yes.
And the idea that they were trying to put it outside because they didn't need a stage.
Correct.
But at this early stage, I don't think that they quite had a handle on, it feels like the idea here was to try to combine serial action with vaudeville comedy.
Correct.
Which is I don't know, the thesis statement of slapstick, sort of, as a film genre, I should say.
Right. Definitely starting out, it was hard to find material that universally everyone would find funny.
Right.
I mean, slapstick, the origins of just hitting someone on the butt very loudly with a stick, doesn't translate to sound film very well. You can't hear the thwap of it.
Yeah, you could have some guy there with a thwap and it timing himself to it.
A percussive instrument.
Well, and wordplay was really important too, and that comes out in the Marx Brothers movies, which were just out of the hatter.
Double entendres, puns, yes, for sure, and talking really fast—that was their thing.
And there's still really strict formulas. The Marx Brothers movies have very strict formulas to the point where you realize, oh, now they're going to have a piano moment, and now they're going to. So that whole thing, the Marx Brothers, I not knowing too much, to me, represents vaudeville perfectly.
Yes, it was really the start of stage parents too, because their mother Minnie made their careers, and the reason they went so divergently on different paths, like Marco
Polo Marx. Yeah.
Sleeper Groucho. I don't know how it came out Marco. Maybe Chico and Groucho had some sort of ancestral baby and called it Marco. Anyway, Groucho was known for being the leader, very satirical, very witty, really big on the double entendres, twirling his mustache, that whole thing. And he always poked fun at his brothers.
Or the eyebrows, his thing with, the raising. Yeah.
And Chico was known for playing the piano, being Italian when they were really Russian Jew, or German Jew. And Harpo, silent, mute, honking horn near his belt for some reason, played the harp very well. Zeppo, my favorite. Oh,
he was known for being handsome.
Yes, Romanesque nose, beautiful man. And he tried to make excuses for the kind of like zany comedy that his brothers were doing.
He was the straight man.
Of sorts, yeah.
In some of the movies.
Yeah, he had a sense of humor for what they were doing, but he tried to explain away or normalize what his brothers were doing.
So, if you're thinking of it from that standpoint, people who haven't seen these movies, Harpo is the slapstick part of vaudeville brought to life.
But he needs Chico to chase him.
Right, you need someone else doing it. Mm-hmm. So these movies are like, these really early ones are sort of, let's take this and put it outside because we can film now.
Yes.
And so this one, Bangville Police was all on a farm.
Yes.
And they basically have one joke. And that's that they think the cow's been stolen, and it turns out they just misplaced it.
And it turns out to be a very, very common theme for all of the movies we're watching. Misunderstandings.
Misunderstandings must have been very funny.
Yes.
Yeah, which is something
they didn't know that they really meant this. Oh, isn't that universally? Don't you do that every day?
Yeah, which to me is a very British comedy thing.
Musical
and a very Japanese one. A lot of Japanese comedies that I've seen.
Breaking social rules.
Yeah, you messed up a social rule.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, I personally don't think that the Keystone, that these movies just aren't, they don't transcend their time. I didn't laugh very much.
No, I mean, there's like historical jokes lodged in there that makes perfect sense to the audiences they were meant for. But to us, it's like, oh, that's not really that funny.
And so then we watched this sort of bridge here to Roscoe Arbuckle, who most people know as Fatty Arbuckle. That was his stage name.
I find it offensive.
Which you find offensive if you want to. And so in our household, I always say Roscoe Arbuckle. I don't use the fatty word, but...
And then we tried to tell Patrick and Regina about it, but then...
Yeah, they didn't... They had no idea who Roscoe Arbuckle was.
Until we said fatty.
Yeah, and so... Roscoe Arbuckle and Mabel Normand were kind of a duo.
They were paired. Yeah.
And that's the joke. Say goodnight, Gracie. Good night, Gracie. Yeah. But obviously they didn't have sound in these movies. So we watched Fatty Joins the Force, which was directed by George Nichols, and stars Roscoe Arbuckle. Mabel was not in this one.
No.
And it's sort of like, it's not really a Keystone short, but it's sort of like the idea that he saves saves a little girl from drowning, not by his own accord. He's shoved into the water to save her.
Yes.
And is labeled a hero and just put on the police force without any experience. And the
girl's father is like the chief of police.
The chief of police, yeah, I think that's what they said.
Yes.
And so, yeah, that I mean, that's a kind of funny joke. I don't think I laughed at any of the jokes with. Well, I did laugh because he takes off his uniform to clean himself.
Correct. And
they find his uniform and just assume he died, and so they're holding a vigil for him.
Yes.
That's a pretty funny joke, I suppose. But you start to see some of the sort of, I think something that defines this era of slapstick is the acrobatic abilities of the performers.
And the need to find a gimmick for what your own comedic style was. Roscoe was a fat man, therefore he was fatty. Charlie Chaplin started out in musical theater, originally with the intent to be dramatic, went into comedy. He went to Keystone Films, or Triangle. He borrowed Roscoe Arbuckle's outfit, large shoes, large hat, and a stick, and became the Tramp.
And then Arbuckle was a mentor to Buster Keaton, correct?
Yes, they met each other. They're close friends in real life. People found it humorous and kind of unnerving that Buster Keaton turned out to be the stone face. Never cracked a smile, never cracked a joke, but he was capable of such physical comedy that and it was cultivated through vaudeville that he did acrobatics and pratfalls. That was just his thing. He never got hurt.
And so yeah, Roscoe Arbuckle is an important figure here, even if he's not. Unfortunately, and we won't go into the details, but unfortunately, Roscoe Arbuckle's career collapsed because he was falsely accused of a very brutal murder.
And it coincided with the rise of modern censorship.
Yeah, and so it wasn't even a murder; it was a urinary tract infection that went wrong or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, but even though he was found innocent, and the judge even wrote a special letter saying like he's super innocent, guys.
Yeah.
The sort of general idea was that he wasn't. That he was
squeaky clean image.
Yeah, and that so he was destroyed, and it's unfortunate because he was at the head of all this, and he probably could have done really well in sound film.
Yeah, the downside to working in sound is that you had to use the voice that you were born with. Both Roscoe and Buster, unfortunately, had very gravelly voices. So, and then with sound film, you just had to mouth meme.
He probably would have, like, been in a. He could have had, like, oh God, what's his name? The guy who plays gangsters and.
Edward G. Robinson.
Yeah, not even
James
him.
Cagney?
Not even him. Who am I thinking of? The big guy, white hair, is always squinting. I guess he didn't play gangsters, huh?
George Raft?
Raft, yeah.
Okay.
Arbuckle, like, Raft kind of took what could have been Arbuckle's later career, I think.
I disagree with that.
You disagree? Okay.
Yes.
Well, and then so we watched Fatty and Mabel Adrift from 1916, which was directed by
Yes.
Roscoe. And so this was sort of, from what I understand, as a sort of a quintessential Roscoe and Mabel, or Fatty and Mabel short.
They go do something.
And it was, it's longer than the other ones.
Yes.
The idea behind this one is that, and this one's also on YouTube if you want to see it. It's still kind of primitive compared to what came out only 10 years later.
Yes.
But you can see the sort of things happening where they're starting to mess with editing and cinematography more. It's just that film changed so quickly in this era. So many things about what movie making was, because it was such a new art form. But we are living in that modern, quote, modern times where you didn't have to be stuck with certain forms.
Yeah, I mean, you could make a house float, for example.
Right.
You can stretch reality and just extend it beyond what people watching films are used to.
And so you're adding, by special effects, you're adding magic tricks to the thing.
Absurdity, things that shouldn't be the case, and then therefore humor.
Right. And so you can film something that you can't perform on stage.
Yes.
And I think this one, actually, Fatty and Mabel Adrift has some cinematic qualities to it, too. There's a scene where their house is too close to the ocean, is basically the gist here.
Oh, I interpret it as them being on a honeymoon.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Yes, they're on their
It's like a
honeymoon.
cottage.
So, like, the cottage that they're staying at, and he's fishing, and there's a joke where he pulls in a fish that's too big, and they kind of wrestle. But they shoot it mostly in silhouette, which that's a cinematic trait there.
And they're shooting night for night because it's so dim.
And then so there's some, just a couple years. This has only been 3 years since the other movies. They're already taking stuff from, like, the German expressionists that are being like all those horror movies that were really over the top. And pretty soon they're going to start taking editing lessons from the Russians and their montage thing. It's not as straightforward already. And so this one, they end up literally adrift inside a house.
Yes.
And it's a pretty spectacular set.
It is.
It looks dangerous. I felt scared for the dog. There's a dog that probably doesn't know what the hell is happening.
Yes. He thinks his owner, Roscoe's in real danger.
Yeah. You said that they tended to use
Pets are animals that were trained and owned by either a actor or a crew member.
And I think another thing you can see at this point that is a big thing for me personally is the roots of cartoon comedy.
Yes.
Because I think for the most part, we still have slapstick movies, but I think cartoons really took over slapstick for a lot, for the most part.
They really picked up what was humorous. Like, oh, you guys like this movie? Let's put it in a cartoon.
So you can see like those early Disney and Max Fleischer cartoons, the way things move, and the sort of the movement of characters is then exaggerated, but they were already exaggerated at this point.
And the expressions of
And their expressions, because they're wearing makeup.
Yes.
To make and that's a big deal in the horror movies, is they have white faces with outlined eyes so that they're really expressed. But it works in the comedy too.
Yes.
I think it was something growing up that the comedies were always a little bit eerie to me because of that makeup, because that became a bigger thing for horror movies.
Yes.
Yeah. So now we're getting into the big year that I don't think we did this on purpose. We just sort of picked some movies, and it turned out most of them came out in 1925.
Kind of, what is the year? 1984 of horror films and slasher films?
Yeah, and like 81 was the big one for slasher films. And like 99 was a big deal for like American Hollywood studios trying experimental stuff. So yeah, there's years that this kind of stuff happens. 2020 will be the year when no movies came out.
Yeah, sorry about that.
But we'll maybe get a really interesting Oscars this year because they'll have to pick from the stuff that was much smaller in scale. They can't pick the big.
20s turned out.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, 1925, and I wanted to start with. I actually gave Kristine the option to not do a Charlie Chaplin movie.
Yeah.
Because she cares about the sort of personal stories and the tabloid qualities of these people as performers.
For sure.
So Chaplin was known for being a prick.
Yes.
And whereas Roscoe...
Philanderer,
Yeah.
love him and leave him type of thing.
And Roscoe Arbuckle was known for being likable.
Yes.
So I think that feeds a lot of what you think about Chaplin.
Yeah. I had to address my bias and begrudgingly choose to watch The Gold Rush.
Yeah, she picked the Gold Rush. I'd say for the record, my favorite Chaplin movie is Modern Times. The two of us watched that already. It was for one of your college classes, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think Modern Times is my favorite, but she picked Gold Rush, and looking into it, it seems like that was his favorite too.
Yes.
And again, this is the 1925 version. Apparently, he George Lucas'd up the movie
director's cut.
in 42.
Redid some of the storylines, cut some scenes.
Added sound.
Yeah.
And I guess this version was sort of lost for a while.
Yes.
It's on Criterion Channel and HBO Max as of this recording. It feels like everything just drops off of HBO Max with no warning, though, so I don't know how long that will be on there.
DC, Criterion.
Yeah, it's just random. But this is a good Chaplin movie. It sort of encapsulates the things that I like and don't like about him. Mm-hmm. I think Modern Times is probably a little more experimental and political. Yeah, and so this is a better, because this is a Little Tramp movie.
Yes,
for sure. Mm-hmm. I guess, do you want to describe the storyline?
Basically, it's the Little Tramp, or Chaplin entering a. Remember how we thought it was going to be California?
Yeah, because when you think Gold Rush, you think California Gold Rush.
But
it's the Klondike Gold Rush.
Klondike, correct.
Which was pretty. So it's a period piece, but only by like 30 years.
Yeah, and then somehow the Little Tramp ends up there. He's having a perfectly fine time going through tundras around cliffs, being followed by a sun bear, and he runs into a lot of people who, in my mind, resembled Jack London or Ernest Hemingway. They're just these rugged, fur coat wearing men who are subsisting off of little to no food in their search for gold. Then one of these Jack London types find that his claim is a gold mountain. And the three people who meet, including the Little Tramp, they part ways, and the Little Tramp goes into town where he's basically invisible. he has people literally look past and through him, in order to see these rugged manly men, and they pick on him for that.
And he's this little shabby guy with clothes that you would die wearing in the Klondike. That's part where you have to kind of suspend your disbelief.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And he eventually, through a lot of hard work and her basically ignoring this kind of Bluto-looking guy in order to, they start dancing together, and he is really,
He's smitten.
He's smitten a whole lot by her, and she's a dancing girl with this one bar or saloon, and eventually her and her fellow dancing girlfriends go to his cabin that he's basically cabin sitting for another guy who's a prospector.
Mm-hmm.
And they make a farce of him and make fun of him, and they make a date to...
Yeah, they play a really cruel joke.
Absolutely.
Which is making a date that they don't plan
on New Year's.
Yeah.
Who stands up to someone on New Year's Eve? He makes this really nice dinner, makes a gift for her, and all the while they're at the saloon, and she's swearing her love to the Bluto bad guy, and they eventually, after the stroke of midnight, remember they had this date with this guy. And he leaves the house thinking they're not going to go, and she goes into the house realizing all the hard work he's
Yeah, they were actually going to make fun of him even more,
Yes.
and then she sees all his hard work.
Yeah. He had really made a sincere effort, and she's sad about it. And then one of the people who found the gold mound comes back and says, I made a claim, but I don't remember where it is. It's by the cabin. Who else knows where the cabin is? Oh my gosh, this tramp
Yeah,
man.
his name is Big Jim. He actually,
That's right,
I like
Jim.
Big Jim.
Yep. He finds a tramp, and he says, we need to equip up and go back to this cabin, and that's where my claim is. They eventually find the house, they go to sleep, and then they find themselves on the edge of a cliff during a storm.
Right, which is, yeah. So I would say, they eventually get the claim.
Yeah.
And become millionaires, and then the girl loves him, I guess.
Of sorts.
Which is sort of, there's a little bit of, like I said, things I don't like about Chaplin's movies and things I do like. Mm. And I think it's almost unfair to compare this to the other two movies from this year we're going to talk about, because a lot of Chaplin's movies were a big genre movie that the tramp wanders into.
Yes.
So Jack London. I didn't even think of Jack London, but you're right. It's a Jack London story.
Yes.
It's White Fang or Call of the Wild minus the dogs plus the Littlest Tramp.
The dogs make a minor appearance.
Yeah. So it's really like he's making big dramas, mm-hmm. and then sort of inserting this one character.
It's kind of like a foil.
Yeah. Whereas the one we're going to talk about after this one, Go West, mm-hmm. by Buster Keaton, that is a Buster Keaton Western.
Yes.
That's not a Western that Buster Keaton wanders into. I think it's a different thing.
I think they have something in common in that they do kind of wander into something, but they want to become part of something.
Right.
They want to work their way up.
Yeah. So yeah, Buster Keaton's version of a Western is, isn't it funny that Buster Keaton's in a Western? Mm-hmm. And Charlie Chaplin's version of a Western is, look at this Western and how great it is. Mm-hmm. And oh yeah, there's also this
minor
guy.
romance.
Yeah. And then like breaks for really big set pieces. Mm-hmm. So like the things that in this movie, and unfortunately the thing that makes The Gold Rush not as funny as some of these other movies is that its best gags have been stolen.
Yes.
I don't know if this is the original time this happens, but there's the part where Big Jim and the tramp are stuck in this cabin together, and they're starving, and Big Jim starts to see the tramp as a chicken.
Yes.
I don't know if that's the first time they've done this thing, but that's a thing. It's in every cartoon. Any cartoon where someone's hungry, mm-hmm. they start to see the person as food.
As the T-bone steak is a big one. Right.
And so, or a big ham, maybe. And so that joke is done to death, so it's not that funny anymore.
Another who did it first occasion that comes in this movie is the roll dance,
Yeah,
which is something that the tramp does to entertain the dancing girls. He puts two
but only in
forks-
his mind.
That's
It's his
right,
version
it's a
of what would go
montage of
right if he would
mind.
entertain, but then he falls asleep and it doesn't
right.
actually. Yeah, but go on, the roll dancing.
He puts two forks in dinner rolls and acts like they're feet of someone doing like a little soft shoe.
Uh-huh.
And there's some debate on if Roscoe Arbuckle did it first, Buster Keaton did it first, and then Charlie Chaplin did it, and one of the members of the Three Stooges alleged they did it first before any of them. So,
And then
who knows?
Johnny Depp did it in Benny and June, which meant that then The Simpsons did it because it was in the Benny and June and it was on people's minds and sort of brought it back.
Benny and June also kind of indicates that Buster Keaton did it first because he wears a pork pie hat the whole movie.
Yeah, he's sort of a weird amalgamation. But I really think when that movie came out in the early 90s, I feel like people are only talking about Chaplin movies. I mean, I was young, so I don't know for sure.
The Chaplin movie would be made a few years after that.
Yeah, and I think that there was a lot of... I think that critics always talk about Chaplin because he generally makes dramas that have really big scope to them, whereas Keaton and Harold Lloyd tend to make comedies.
And there's also another thing, too, is that Buster Keaton, though he was often forgotten in reference to, with regards to Charlie Chaplin, but Charlie Chaplin he got in a boat off of New York Harbor and asked not to come back.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a point where he was anti-American.
Yeah.
And he was best in, left to England, so...
Yeah. And then and he also remained in the critical eye because he made the Dictator, Great Dictator,
Correct.
which was controversial at the time and is now considered a very.
Kind of hard.
So yeah, he made a pretty easy inroad into sound at the time. That was still really sound. The thing I don't like about a lot of Chaplin's tramp movies is I find them very maudlin.
Yeah.
City Lights and The Kid, if I'm remembering them correctly. It's been a long time since I've seen those two. I just remember them like really hamming up the sadness.
Yes.
And I think the Gold Rush, the drama, a lot of the drama really comes from the fact that it sucked to be in the Klondike Gold Rush.
It did, and it sucked to be ignored. It sucks to be bullied. These other two movies have a lot of aspects of bullying.
Yeah.
These men have it too easy. We should bully them.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of bullying. And I don't know if that's because... it just seems like that was because that was what Keaton and Chaplin both did.
Yes.
Was characters who got bullied. But I think that they also, Chaplin in particular, played... The Little Tramp can be kind of a dick. He's not... He's lovelorn, and
Remember
so...
the shoveling scene?
Yeah. And there's scenes in his other movies where he just sort of does rude things,
Yes.
and he'll kick a dog, you know? And so, yeah, there's scenes in The Gold Rush where you're like, yeah, he's not a perfect person here,
Absolutely.
which is kind of, I think, fitting with who he was. The other thing I think that Chaplin does well, even though I find his romance kind of dumb because he doesn't, I don't know, he's sort of
deserve
idealizing himself a
Yes.
little too much.
Yes.
I think that his movies tend to have better female leads with just more to do.
Of sorts.
I think this one in particular, I think Georgie Hale has a lot of personality and she has a real arc. And I think in a lot of the other movies, the only arc is they decide.
I have to love him.
Yeah. Whereas in this case, she really goes back and forth and she continues to try to be with this asshole guy. It's so I mean, I think that Chaplin had an understanding of women, even if he was a philanderer and a piece of shit to them, that he respected what they could bring to a movie in a way.
Because it was very often the case where women in comedy were they start out women in general start out as being models, then actresses, serious actresses, and comedics if they could handle it. They had to pull a lot of expressions. They had to reserve any kind of agency that they could have for that role, and just do non-physical humor.
And then the kind of thing that still existed by the time we're to I Love Lucy, that sort of crying thing that Lucy does, that wah, that's very vaudeville, even though we're like a solid 30 years removed from it at that point.
Correct.
The one I always think is really funny is I can't remember who it was. Who's in the Airplane movie?
The Airplane movie? Leslie Nielsen?
No. The silent film, the first Oscar winner.
Clara Bow.
Yeah, Clara Bow. I think Clara Bow is really funny in that movie.
Absolutely.
So it's really...
Another person that did make it a talkie. She had a very thick Brooklyn accent.
Yeah. So I think that the women and Mabel, what's her name? Norman. A lot of their comic appeal is they all like it's definitely a problem. It's hard to tell these women apart because they are all flappers. They all have the same build and makeup and hair.
Your hair, long hair up to look like a Bob.
But I think that the women who could be cute flappers but still have, I think more than that just pulling faces. I think like Clara Bow is actually really funny and because she does funny things. She's more physical.
She laughs at herself too.
Yeah.
She makes goals for herself in the similar way that Chaplin and Keaton do.
Yeah, and I think Chaplin, in this movie, at least, I guess Modern Times doesn't have much going on for female performance, but
Really?
It's kind of mean.
It's a man's world.
Yeah, but I think Georgie Hale is actually, and she's an actress I don't think I've ever seen anything else in.
She didn't do that much else.
She replaced Chaplin's then wife, Lita Gray, like late, just before filming started, it said. And then I found out she almost replaced Virginia Sherrill in City Lights a couple years later. So it seems like she was sort of Chaplin's she was like in his back pocket.
Yes.
Just ready for whenever he needed a good leading woman.
And I think it's saying a lot that she never romantically got involved with him, never became his wife, never got much closer. They were close for the rest of she died, maybe 10 or 20 years afterward, but they were close. They maintained a professional relationship and they were friends.
Yeah, it said that she actually made money in real estate, is what I read.
Nice.
So yeah, she just kind of got out of films. So there's the eating scene, and the other scene we have to talk about is the scene where they're on the edge of the cliff.
Yes.
And it's really, it's primitive special effect by modern standards, but it was probably very expensive at the time.
Very small marionetting, like.
They have a model.
About that.
They have a model that tilts on the model of the cliff, and then they have a set that appears to actually move because they're faking moving at first. They're doing the whole Star Trek, you shake the camera thing.
Yes.
But I can't remember the actor playing Big Jim, but Chaplin and him can't do some of that stuff.
Some of it, yeah. The other part that came up, really that got my attention was when the wind was blowing earlier on in the film. That was blowing through the cabin, through in one door and then out the other door. The fact that Chaplin can basically moonwalk forward, subsiding on nothing at all, that is a huge vaudeville talent.
Yeah. And that's just Chaplin's physical skills.
And fortunately, I don't think the Big Jim character could do that either, so he did what he could.
His thing was being big. He was hired for his size.
And then you immediately said while it was happening, Big Jim shouldn't climb on top of Charlie Chaplin. It should be the other way around. He's heavier than him.
Yeah. But I think they must have had the actual set on a gimbal too.
Perhaps, yes.
It just seems like there was too extreme of an angle, but maybe not. Maybe they're just that good physically. They definitely didn't have the dancing on the ceiling thing yet.
Nope. Nowhere near.
But this because these were popular movies, and it said it was the 5th highest grossing film of the silent era. Fortunately, I did not research which the top 4 were.
I'm sure they were great.
They were probably also a couple Chaplin movies in there. But so yeah, this was a blockbuster movie. This was a big deal movie.
Yes.
And
That didn't shoot in Alaska
no,
or
they built sets. They built
Yes.
full-on sets.
he had tried to work out of Truckee, which is a mountainous town in California, where there was snow, but that turned out not to work out so well.
Yeah, it's very hard to work in real snow. You can kind of tell it's fake snow, but the fact that it's black and white, or some of these movies, when we say black and white, the silent era really like tinting things.
Yes.
That's something that I think was lost for a while. They would find these old movies and they wouldn't take the tinting notes. So, like the old VHS and TV versions were just black and white. In the years since, they've started to correctly tint them according to what they were supposed to.
The big tinting one that comes to my mind especially is Peter Pan.
Peter Pan, yeah. And God, what was the one we? The Lodger.
Yes.
The Lodger has certain scenes
That
tinted
has some
certain ways.
yellowing, some blue darkness. Yes, beautiful film.
So yeah, and then wow, we're moving right along.
Amazing.
I mean, these are short movies, I guess, is what it comes down to.
Yes.
And again, this is the mellow podcast.
Sorry.
No. I'm just I just reminded the audience that they can take it cool. So then we watched Go West, which was the one thing I demanded we watch, because I think if you can say such a thing, I think it's the most underrated of Buster Keaton's feature-length movies.
The General gets a lot of attention. Steamboat Willie gets... No, wait. Steamboat Bill Jr. gets a lot of
Steamboat Bill Jr. Yeah, those are...
7 days, 7 chances. Or no, 1 week, 7 chances.
I think that I would say the General and Steamboat Bill Jr. are the two, because the General is the one with the train, which has amazing train stunts that apparently cost $1 bazillion. And Steamboat Bill Jr. is the one with the frame of the house falls around
I think
him.
it might be Steamboat Bill and Sherlock Jr. Sorry.
Sherlock Jr. is another one that was pretty bad. But when people picture Buster Keaton, they usually picture the whole frame of the house falling around him.
Yes. Or him being on the front of a train.
Yes. So Go West is a little bit before those. And I think it's actually, when you get it on DVD or Blu-ray, it's almost always coupled with The Battling Butler, which is another, I think, kind of overlooked Buster Keaton movie. But the idea of Gold West, so like I said, Gold Rush is a sort of Western that Chaplin wanders into. Go West is a Western built around Keaton's sort of stone-faced character.
Yes.
Does he ever have a name? He just is... And he's
this
called
one he's
Friendless. Friendless. He has a name like that in every one of them, like a descriptive name.
Something close to it, yeah.
And the idea here is the first idea is Buster Keaton as a hapless cowboy, which is already enough to build a movie around.
Yes.
But like that's what the General is. The General is sort of Buster Keaton in a war movie with incredibly perilous stunts.
Yes.
And
he brings his wife through too.
Yeah, which I think of as a sort of spoof of serials again. Like I think it's
The Perils of Pauline.
Yeah, and then this is a spoof. Like Westerns were another genre that did really well in the silent era because you could shoot them outside.
This one just had an irregular love interest, and that's okay.
Right, and so but that's the thing. Yeah, so like that could be a movie right there. It's just Buster Keaton as a hapless cowboy.
Yeah.
But what the heart of the movie is really Buster Keaton falls in love with a cow.
Yes.
That's really the heart of the movie, and not in a dirty way. But like
They respect each other.
Yeah, and so like
They keep each other alive.
he has no idea what's going on in the West. But
He puts it together. He's a dynamic, adaptive character.
Right.
He's like, I need a gun, I need chaps, I need to walk a certain way, I need to ride a horse, but don't hurt my cow.
right, and so he's afraid of everything in the desert when he first gets there.
Yes.
Which, growing up in the desert, this is supposed to take place around Santa Fe, not too far from Tucson. Same basic environment. Actually, Santa Fe's a little nicer. It's colder.
There's lots of ranches there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a cooler climate though. But cactuses, rattlesnakes, and he's afraid of everything. But then this cow, he helps a cow get a rock out from her hoof, and then she rescues him from a charging bull. And so this character sort of like this is the most important thing in his life now is this cow. And so a lot of the movie is, like, half the movie's him doing tasks either in an unusual way or totally failing.
Or he's unknowingly doing very well at them.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So he is tricked into they say put the steers back in, and there's the myth that bulls charge red.
Mm-hmm.
So he leads the bulls in with red, but he doesn't really. And I think the ultimate joke here is that because this one cow is so nice to him, most of the movie he doesn't understand how dangerous cows can be.
Yes.
So
they're not going to hurt him.
Right, and so it's like the same thing that happens in I don't remember which movie it is where he's going between the buildings.
Between the buildings.
With big wood planks. It's one of the shorts. I can't. It doesn't matter. So like where those movies are about him being on a plank that's gonna fall. Mm-hmm. The peril here is him unknowingly almost getting hit by bulls constantly.
You could also say that he's being chased by bulls, much like 1 week where he's being chased by unmarried women.
Yes. And is 1 week the one where he
has to get married?
He has to get married and they have to build a house?
No.
Which is the one where they have to build a house?
7 Chances.
7 Chances, I think, is taking from the Roscoe and Mabel one. Roscoe and Mabel Adrift has all this destruction of this house.
Yes.
I'm assuming.
But it's their house.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then we have the destruction of a house in Gold Rush. So, like, big houses getting destroyed was very funny
in like
to people in the silent era.
Unrealistic ways.
Right. Like, oh my God, this house fell off a cliff.
How absurd.
This house fell in the water. This house was hit by a train. Yeah, that kind of stuff. But yeah, so the reason Go West is so funny is because he takes it upon himself to protect this cow.
Yes.
And he's not particularly good at it, but the cow likes him. And he doesn't understand that the cow is going to go to the slaughterhouse eventually. Mm-hmm. And the cow can't come into the sleeping quarters with him.
Have dinner, yeah.
And so, the thing I'll get into later is about the stunts. But so at this time, the hardest story, befriending a cow, and so the funny thing is, it's just a picture of him standing next to a cow is funny.
Yes.
You don't actually need to go any further than that because they both have these placid faces.
Yes.
And I think a cow ends up being the perfect animal because it's big enough to be awkward with him. Mm-hmm. And then it's placid enough that we can project emotions onto it. If it was a dog, you know when a dog's happy. For sure. A cow can blink its eyes a couple times. It basically just stares. And so you're like, oh, look how happy that cow is. That cow might be miserable. We don't know. It's ridiculous. And in general, cows are cute. And they pick a particularly cute cow on top of that, Brown Eyes.
Brown Eyes the cow.
But so the idea that Brown Eyes is the love interest of this movie, where Kathleen Myers plays a pretty ranch hand who recognizes that she's like a rancher's daughter, in my opinion. Right? Yeah, I'm sorry, rancher's daughter, the ranch hand, the lead rancher's daughter, and she recognizes immediately that he's has empathy and sympathy. Yes. So that draws her to him, and there's not necessarily a romance between them, but like she wants. There's a part where she asks the dad if can we just give him the cow? He really likes that cow. Yeah. So again, she doesn't have that much character to her, but it's the idea that instead of falling in love with this woman, he protects this cow and does everything he can, and that the woman likes him because of the way he's protecting this cow is really cute. I think another thing to add on to why a love interest of a cow is so unusual is because when he brings the stampede or all these bulls through this town in order to get to the rancher's stockade, people are terrified. Right. They are running into stores, wreaking havoc, just anything to get away from these cows because they don't belong in a barbershop. It's actually L.A. It's actually early L.A. where they are. So it's cows just running through L.A. It's scary. People are running away. And he doesn't really understand how dangerous bulls are because this girl cow is so nice to him. Right. So his the fact that he is a bad cowboy makes him a good cowboy. Yeah.
Yes.
Which is a very Looney Tunes thing.
He's a cow conservationist.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that happens to Porky Pig, where he's so bad at something he's good at it.
Yes.
Or Goofy.
Yes, that's a big one.
Mickey Mouse to a certain degree. Donald Duck, not so much, because his whole thing is about the misery that's thrust upon him.
He's still going to make the reference to the Goofy related thing.
Right. Well, I think that this movie, so me being who I am.
A critic.
No, me being Gabe, the man who used to be a child. To me, Buster Keaton movies always feel more modern than a lot of Chaplin movies, because the things that happened in them were borrowed so liberally for cartoons. And so, whereas the Chaplin stuff feels like those early Disney and Max Fleischer cartoons, which feel old. A lot of the Buster Keaton stuff was picked up by Friz Freleng and Tex Avery and Chuck Jones for Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry.
Yes.
And so
Chases.
Chases being a big thing in a lot of Keaton's movies. I mean, you have the chase, the bride's chasing him in 8 weeks, seven chances. The other one with a number, 7 chances. You have this movie ends on a really spectacular stampede chase where he dons he just knows that they follow red, and so he dons this devil costume and they start chasing him, and then it's sort of the other it dawns on him that oh wait, this is really dangerous.
Yes.
And he can really book it. And then
the cops grab his tail. And
he ends up saving the LAPD, which is, I guess, sort of modern there. But they're not really the Keystone Cops. They're just not good at their jobs. They're not goofy at their jobs.
Yeah, they're scared of the bulls.
Yeah. So that, and then the General is basically, the second half of the General is all one big chase.
Yes.
It's, instead of cars, it's trains. But so a lot of that stuff ends up in things. And then the Aardman Company, a lot of their stuff, they did Wallace and Gromit and Chicken Run.
Right.
There's very Buster Keaton qualities to those. And Pixar movies end up picking up from those other sources.
Do you want to segue into Harold Lloyd?
Well, I have a couple more things about this before. But yes, Harold Lloyd ends up picking up this. And I think I would say the purest slapstick animation we currently have is the Amazing Adventures of Gumball, or World of Gumball, which is a show that's almost pure slapstick. It's become more satirical recently, but it's like hardcore slapstick, and that's what its value. And so these movies feel more modern because those things never went away.
Absolutely.
Whereas some of that Keystone Cop stuff kind of went away, I think. It
became obsolete. The humor was just so of its time.
And I think even some of Chaplin's became sort of obsolete. And the other thing that I want to say about Keaton here is that he ended up being his stuff kept modern because people like Jackie Chan picked up on it.
That is true.
Because Keaton's really a comedic action hero.
And Bob Newhart picked up on it too.
Yeah. But Keaton as a comedic action hero, I don't think you can have comedic action movies without acknowledging Buster Keaton at this point. So you have people like, I don't have any other examples, but basically any comedic action movie you can think of, in every Jackie Chan movie that's popular, because Jackie Chan was originally a Bruce Lee ripoff, and that didn't work out for him, so he started doing this hapless kung fu thing.
And then he occasionally pairs up with other people, as Buster Keaton did too.
And the fact that they're put in such horrible peril for jokes. I guess in Jackie Chan's case, sometimes it's to be spectacular, but a lot of times it's because it's funny.
Yes.
Those kinds of things, they just continue to feel modern because we're still doing them. And I think that this movie ends. I think that the Stampede chase is really one of the coolest action scenes in any of these movies. I think it's a really solid, and I should say Battling Butler ends with a pretty rousing boxing match.
Yes.
That Keaton's character finally snaps, and
that's another good illustration of what how Jackie Chan makes his fights look good, because he evades people in like, how'd he do that kind of ways, the same way that Buster Keaton and Battling Butler did, where how did I win that? Because it felt like I just fell down and avoided his punches. Is that really what I did?
Well, and also he gets hurt in it, and Jackie
Yes.
Chan really gets hurt.
Often.
And he makes sure that's part of his movies, is that you do think that maybe something bad will happen to him, whereas a lot of other kung fu kind of wuxia movies, they're sort of invincible warriors. Especially a thing for samurai movies, which is Japanese, not Chinese, but there's a sort of invincibility of the characters, and Jackie Chan brought that vulnerability, which is something that Keaton definitely has. I think that Keaton also has the perfect silent scream, which is something that Chaplin doesn't. Chaplin has angry face,
Yes. He has like dismay.
dismayed face. Keaton will yell.
Yes.
He has an ah kind of face.
Yes.
And you can, your mind, it can put the sound in with it. And he unleashes it at perfect times. And Go West, when boxes or barrels are falling on him, he just has this face that makes me laugh every time. This fucking sucks face that he has. This I'm angry and this fucking sucks. That is just because his eyes are bigger.
Yes.
And his face has this sort of droopy quality. I actually had a friend whose mom said I looked just like Buster Keaton when I was a teenager, and I can kind of see it because I had buggy eyes when I was younger, and it kind of drooped to my face. So I've always really liked that about him.
And you told me once or twice that you've tried doing like pulling expressions in a mirror.
Yeah. Being an only child, you spend a lot of time building up stupid skills like twiddling your thumbs and dumb human tricks. And yes, I would spend a lot of time in front of a mirror pulling faces.
That's comedic.
Yeah, and I think that, but so the idea that he has the stone face, but has these very subtle variations in the stone face,
Yes.
makes it very funny. It's not like Jim Carrey,
Rubber
pulling
face.
the most rubber face he can manage, which is something that you see in Laurel and Hardy. They pulled rubber
They
faces.
certainly do. They also do the exaggerated crying that you were talking about.
And Abbott and Costello is all about Lou Abbott's or Bud Costello's just as outwardly crazy faced as he can possibly be. And that was something Roscoe Arbuckle did too, because he was like playing for the cheap seats with
Yes.
his face.
Absolutely.
I think that's something performative, whereas Keaton sort of understands there's a camera on him. He doesn't need to be over the top about it.
Less is more.
The funniest joke in any I almost call him Michael Keaton, Buster Keaton movie is in the movie The General. He gets in a situation where he's trying to help with a battle, and every time he points at someone to give them an order to do something, they get shot.
Oh yeah.
And his face just drops as he realizes, and every time he points as subtly as he can, and that person gets shot too. Yeah, so, and I should say there are meta jokes that in Go West in particular, the idea that he dons the entire, I keep saying dons, he puts on an entire cowboy outfit but won't put on the cowboy hat because he has the special Buster Keaton hat.
He picks up the hat, looks at it, and he says, "This is me. I don't see any reason to get rid of it."
And then he is threatened during a card game and told he has to smile, and he can't because he's Buster Keaton. Buster Keaton can't smile.
Yes.
And that's a metatext joke. That's not a joke in the movie itself. That's a joke for the audience to go, Buster Keaton can't smile.
Yeah, it's definitely for the camera, very third wall.
So that's a good thing. Do you have anything else to say about this movie, or should we move on to Freshman? We'll move on to The Freshman, also 1925. I ordered them this way just because I wanted to. I don't know if they came out in this order. They probably didn't.
Probably not.
This one's produced by and starring Harold Lloyd at a point when Lloyd was a box office draw.
Yes.
And directed by Fred C. Newmeyer and Sam Taylor, who were sort of repertoire directors. They were in there to do it. They were work-a-day directors. And I think of Harold Lloyd as the also-ran of silent film comedians.
He's the guy with the glasses.
He's the guy with the glasses. And he's most famous for... This was his biggest grossing movie, but he's most famous for Safety Last because everybody did Safety Last. There's a million versions. There's music video versions of Safety Last. Just the one where he falls off a clock tower.
and hangs on to, I assume, the minute hand.
Yeah, it's something like that. Like that's been done in serious movies, like as a seriously suspenseful thing and as a funny suspenseful thing.
Something about falling from a height is just humorous.
And not falling is and so but he doesn't get mentioned. He's the third guy. Like, and Arbuckle is
all of the big three.
Yeah, he's the third in the big three. Arbuckle is an important guy who's not given his due because of what happened with his court case.
He's basically 3.5.
Yeah, but Lloyd is like there's Keaton. Keaton's the one everybody these days loves the most.
Correct.
Chaplin's the one for the critics, and Lloyd is the other guy. And that's in part his fault because I was looking into it, and his early persona was just the little tramp.
Yes.
He just sort of did other people's bits.
Yeah, and then he eventually formulated an image with Hal Roach, which, like I said before, you do your own production and you entrust the distribution to somebody else, another studio, which happened to be through Hal Roach. And they developed the fact that he should be this one guy with glass, or the guy with glasses, or a glass sort of persona, where he's motivated, he's can-do attitude, and he's generally an all-American everyman in that way.
Yeah, the stone face will do what he needs to do, but he's not really into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Chaplin will stumble into situations. So this is the go-getter.
Yes.
He's like the perpetual loser who eventually gets through to the other
Which
side.
you found hilarious because you're like, he's so attractive.
Well, yeah, I do think it's very funny because, excuse me, I burped. Charlie Chaplin is a tiny man.
Yes.
And Buster Keaton is a silly-looking man. Yeah, Harold Lloyd's
Charlie
handsome.
Chaplin's mustache is not his own.
Yeah, they made themselves look even more ridiculous.
Yes.
Harold Lloyd really has to fight to make himself look like a nerd by putting on these glasses and stuff because he's clearly very physically fit. When he does a stunt, it's like, yeah, there's a physically fit man doing a stunt. When Buster Keaton does a stunt, it's like a magic trick because how did this little man pull off that amazing physical feat? Like he's defying gravity. Whereas, yeah, Harold Lloyd, you're like, oh, yeah, that's a muscular human who, of course, can do a backflip.
Yes.
But yeah, he has himself as the underdog. And he has none of the curmudgeon-y thing that Keaton and Chaplin have.
No, he's just so idyllic. He sees the good in things.
Right.
And he's excited to go to college.
Yeah. Which is funny because The Freshman, it was his first feature-length movie, I believe, or long form.
Yeah.
I don't know what they called it. They didn't say feature-length. Long form, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And it was
with reels, like single reel.
Yeah,
reels,
yeah.
reels.
And so this was his first try at a narrative film rather than stunts.
With a story.
And this one does have a full story and characters and arcs. It might be the fullest story that we watched for this podcast.
I would agree with that.
I think that a lot of the Gold Rush is situational comedy and set pieces. And same thing with Go West has a lot of set pieces. Whereas this is really a story with a couple set pieces thrown in.
Yeah. You follow this man through, I assume, with a school year.
Yeah, I don't know how much time passes, but he is a freshman who comes onto campus and is immediately mocked because he's so into being at college. He has this little happy dance he does to shake people's hands. Yeah. And he gets in bad situations where he accidentally hurts the dean or accidentally takes the dean's car into town.
Does his speech.
Yeah, and he's purposely thrown into... He's bullied without knowing he's being bullied, which is one of those things, like, you see so many stereotypes. I don't know if they all start here, but they definitely start around here.
Yes, upperclassmen picking on freshmen.
And putting them in situations that are a hazing situation that's a really cruel prank. It's not just a physical prank, but it's like put them in a situation where they're going to make an idiot out of themselves and
let
not
the water boy be on the team.
Yeah. And so he his go get it attitude is really that him not understanding that he's being teased.
Yes, unwittingly.
And yeah, again, that helps it feel modern because all of these things are still used in college and high school comedies. He's the hero and the heroine who their love interest. They misunderstand each other's social cues.
Yes.
And he ends up getting in a higher social standing than her, so she thinks she has no chance with him now. Mm-hmm. That's a thing that happens in every fucking high school movie that I watched with Tyler for our podcast.
For sure.
There's the jocks are assholes. There's a haplessly snobbish college dean, which is an Animal House thing. They even wear those hats.
Oh, those silly beanies.
Those beanies are worn in Animal House as a way of, look at these dorks. They're wearing the stupid old hats. Mm-hmm. The hero learns to be true to himself, which is the actual on-screen quote this time. Mm-hmm. Basically anything you can think of in a college or high school movie with a romantic aspect is in here somewhere.
I think the one thing that doesn't fit in modern films but fits in with all of these is some sort of wardrobe-related gaffe. Where the tailor who's instructed to basically sew together his homecoming dance formal suit, he has dizzy spells, so he can't fully finish his outfit. And while he's doing speeches, while he's dancing, pieces of his suit is falling apart. He can't bend a certain way. The tailor's there and fainting as he sews on his sleeve, and something about losing your clothes, falling off a cliff, being bullied. It just ties all these films together. And
it's funny in this. It's actually probably the funniest of the set pieces. It's known for the end, which has a football scene.
Yes.
But it's probably
actual Rose Bowl.
Yeah. It's much funnier, the part where he's losing his clothes. The idea that this is one thing he knows is socially awkward.
Yes.
Where he doesn't understand he's being socially awkward throughout the rest of the movie, but he knows losing articles of clothing and parts of your clothing.
Being a physical football dummy that linebackers and quarterbacks can tackle, that's perfectly normal.
That goes over his head, yeah. Like, he doesn't get that one.
That's what being part of the team is.
Or all the people laughing at his, not commencement speech, whatever you call the intro speech to your class.
Oh, right, like the...
He thinks they're laughing with him when they're laughing at him.
Yeah, the first day of school speech.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, that is what it makes this different from the other movies, is the way they approach that stuff. But I would say that, like, for instance, we watched, Tyler and I watched Can't Buy Me Love. Can't Buy Me Love has a nerd that ends up in the social, like, moving up the social echelon, and then rejecting the girl who actually cared about him before.
The whole time.
But in this case, he doesn't reject her on purpose. He just misunderstands, and he actually does get back together with her, and it's a very cute romance. But it also has the whole thing of people being put in situations where they're being made fun of without knowing it. And he starts, in that movie, he starts a dance that's a big hit at the homecoming dance based on his version of, like, how do people dance, and instead of, like, watching a normal thing, he watches a sort of PBS special on African dance. So he does a big, and so that's very similar to, in this movie, his Harold Lloyd's dumb little dance he does before a handshake catches on.
Yes.
At the school.
Yeah, like it's the right thing to do all along.
Right. So I do think a lot of this ends up in what becomes teen comedies.
Absolutely.
and the adult college comedies like Animal House. And yeah, I don't know how you prove this, but according to IMDb trivia, this is the first sports movie.
Unlikely.
I don't know how you prove that. Maybe it means first sports movie of a certain length.
Possibly.
But it does have a pretty spectacular ending football scene.
I think they mean like where an actual game was featured in it.
It might be, because they used real USC players. And it's the thing that you see in every movie, every underdog. It's Rudy. They actually tried to sue the people who made The Waterboy.
That's right.
Harold Lloyd's granddaughter tried to sue the people who made The Waterboy, thinking it was basically the same movie, but she would have to have tried to sue so many people. There'd have to be precedent, because every underdog story, you finally stick the guy in at the end, and he helps win the game. Yeah. But in this case, he wins through just the most preposterous
Oh yeah.
movements that are like, he doesn't even understand that when the ref blows the whistle, you're supposed to stop. So he gets tackled by the referee. That's a very good gag, I think.
That is true.
But so the thing it reminds me of the most is the goofy how-to cartoons.
Yes.
Which are my favorite of the Disney shorts.
Mm-hmm. Which also kind of play with reality, like what is possible, or how sports can like defy gravity, or be a force of nature, or something like that.
And so, yeah, and there is a football one of those that takes some gags from this. And I think the football scene in MASH is sort of thinking of this scene. And I get a couple years later, Keaton made College, which is a pretty funny movie.
Yeah.
And I feel like at this point, Lloyd is not copying Keaton anymore. Keaton's actually having to pay attention to Lloyd.
Yes, because he doesn't go to school with a school spirit that Harold Lloyd
Right.
has. He has to teach himself that kind of spirit.
Right. And so it's almost like a spoof of a spoof at that point. Like, I didn't realize that movie came out. I just assumed Lloyd was ripping off Keaton because he was known for being the also-ran. But yeah, at this point, they're all having to sort of take formulas from each other. And I guess I read that also on IMDb trivia, which again, it's hard to say. There was no source.
It's like the Wikipedia.
There was no source listed on this, but they apparently started to film and then deleted a bigger football scene for College, realizing it had too much in common with the freshmen. There is still football in the college.
Yes.
In college, but it's just not as much. It's not.
Not as enough.
Not as enough. It's not as enough. But there's a whole bunch of funny lawsuit things where the producers were sued by author H.C. Whitwer, who claimed that this was just his book called The Emancipation of Rodney. And the case was in court so long that the poor guy died and his wife picked it up.
Oh.
And then she won. And then it was overturned in appeals.
Goodness sakes.
And then, like I mentioned, in the year 2000, Lloyd's granddaughter tried to sue Disney for The Waterboy and failed too. So the freshman ends up being such a vital piece of Americana that it's ripped off by everything, but it might have actually ripped off somebody else in the first place without crediting them.
Correct.
Yeah, I thought that was amusing, that it's sort of like the movie embroiled in all this shit. But yeah, so I guess the only other note I have here that I haven't covered is that at one point someone, he's being, his sleeve has fallen off, and so his tailor is standing behind a curtain acting as his arm, and someone asks him for $10, and the tailor's arm reaches in the pocket and hands him $10, and with his own arm he reaches and grabs the $10 back. And I decided to look up how much is $10 in $1925 or in $2020.
The exchange rate.
The exchange rate would be $152.21. Oh, so yes, I would not lend that guy $10. It's implied that the Harold Lloyd character, whose name is Speedy, who is a character he ended up playing in other movies.
Yes.
It's implied that he has some money. His family has some money, but they're not rich people for sure.
They can't give away $10.
Oh, and the other joke that I thought is 100% relevant is they referred to the school as a large stadium with a college attached to it.
That is true.
It's a great joke.
It is the program that keeps the college going.
Yeah, which it's kind of sad that that's been the case for 100 years now. So that's really all the notes I have on that one. Do you have any... dropping my computer. Do you have any additional memories on this one?
No. My real final thoughts on Slapstick.
Well, yeah. So I want to say, so we talked about these movies. These are like important filmmakers. So yeah, what are your final thoughts on Slapstick in general?
My final thoughts is that, or like further watching or further reading, is a movie called Limelight, which features both Charlie Chaplin and Keaton. That's a talkie. And it's kind of like a semi-biographical film for Charlie Chaplin if he wouldn't have gotten famous from film. If they would have stayed in the theater, that's how he would have turned out, is how this film is built. Abbott Costello, the Keystone Cops you already referenced.
Mm.
And then The Artist, the French film.
Right, which is the sort of meta thing about sound. There's a lot of movies about how sound overtook and actually
Singing in the Rain
ruined.
is a big one.
Yeah, Singing in the Rain, about how it actually ruined some careers. And I don't think it ruined Chaplin or Keaton's careers. I mean, Lloyd still kept on doing stuff too. He appeared in a lot of stuff.
Yes.
I can't think of a single thing I've seen him in where he's talking, though, but he has a pretty long list of credits.
He went into TV and was very successful.
Oh, well, there you go. That's why I don't recognize the credits, because I don't know old TV.
He had a series, or he hosted for something called the Old Gold Comedy Hour. Not only related to Old Gold, the cigarette brand, but the Old Gold, the kind of like feeling of silent film greats. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. He brought on former stars, people that have been famous in the silent era, and brought them back on TV. Basically, like a This Is Your Life for silent film. So.
Yeah, This Is Your Life was a big deal thing that brought on the people like that. And then what was the Groucho Marx show called?
You Bet Your Life.
Yeah, You Bet Your Life.
And then off and on, they would bring people on What's My Line? And what's the mystery guest? No, that's the mystery guest one. What's the other one?
Well, that's one thing that another thing we've been doing during this lockdown is we've been watching British game shows and
right, a lot of variety shows.
Which is something that is kind of an art that was lost in America. We still had a lot of game shows and reality shows, but I think that something happened in the 80s where it was just decided that it was too lame for America.
The last time I really saw like a successful like variety show was Laugh-In, and then Uncle Science It Anyway.
Yeah.
Which
is British.
Exactly. How does that work?
Yeah, and so the Brits just sort of figured out how to keep this particular thing going.
Yeah.
And it just sort of, it was a dying art form here in America. They've tried to do some shit like that because of COVID, because they have restrictions on audiences.
That's true.
And I think it's been awkward every single time I've seen it on TV. So, I think that's what it built into. That's what the silent slapstick built into. I think it was cartoons, variety shows. Chaplin and Keaton were also successful because of United Artists, correct?
Keaton was his own thing.
He was his own company, okay.
Correct. He kept his own production. He decided it would be a good idea to join up with MGM and have them distribute his films, and that's where his career kind of fell off. He turned to alcoholism because that transition was not a good one.
So it was hard for him.
Yes.
Whereas Chaplin, who also had problems with substance, he made money as a producer, so he was still pretty. And then Arbuckle's life fell apart, as we've mentioned several times now. So I guess Harold Lloyd. So TV. So we have remnants of this era in independent film because they started their own studios.
Yes.
Outside the system, TV variety, cartoons. Yeah, and then you get something like Sunset Boulevard, where
it harkens back to.
Where it harkens back, where it's like
Whatever Happened to Baby Jane has some aspects of that.
Yeah.
And then also Movies on TV is another part of that film, where she sees old movies on television of herself.
So it becomes a modern through cartoons and sort of retrospective.
Yeah, like
and nostalgic.
Like what is so and so up to these days?
Yeah.
Where are they now?
And then I think the thing that directly comes from it is early sound stuff, like the Three Stooges is to a lot of people their first live action slapstick. I'm not a very big fan of Three Stooges.
Pies in the Face, slapstick, gags.
Laurel and Hardy's stuff. They had silent stuff, but they were more sound era.
Correct, and they started with music halls for sure.
Right.
Laurel
right.
did.
Makes a big difference.
Yes.
I don't know if any of the guys we were talking about earlier can sing. It was not their job to learn how to sing. It was their job to learn how to do physical stunts.
Correct. Studio systems would like cultivate people, teach them how to sing, teach them how to dance. Silent films, there was really no rules like that.
Yeah.
There was no grooming.
And then you get the Abbott Costellos. Even after that, their Monster Mash movies are their best movies. That was another thing I watched a lot as a kid. Yeah. So it never went away. So we have this 100-year-old art form.
That just takes a different form.
Yeah, that just keeps going, and it really comes out of film. It's a really important part of movie history. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's my final thought on the subject.
I'll leave it there then.
You'll leave it there then? You don't have any more thoughts?
No, just further watching. That was my last bit.
Okay. Well then, I should say the thing we've been watching religiously now is the British show Taskmaster. My God, we're almost out of them. There's a lot of them for free on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's like British comedians being forced to do silly things.
Tasks.
That's it. That's all there is to it. And somehow it feels really fresh. It doesn't feel like Battle of the Network Stars or any of that garbage.
Don't.
As usual, you can reach me at the Genre Grinder website, on the Genre Grinder Facebook page, at genregrinder.com is the website, on at Genre Grinder on Twitter, or at Gabe M, as in Matthew Powers, on Twitter.
I guess you can get glimpses of me through your work since I do your proofreading.
Yeah, she's my proofreader, and I actually have some review stuff I got to do. I think that even though COVID's very far from being over and you should still wear your masks, a lot of companies have figured out ways to deal with it. So I've actually been sent a couple review copies recently.
It's been a welcome surprise. I've really enjoyed seeing stuff in the mail again.
Mm-hmm. So that's nice. So I will actually have some new Blu-ray reviews, and maybe even 4K reviews. I just had one. I just already posted that. That's right. Mm-hmm. And yeah, look forward to Patrick and I are going to do kind of like what we did when we watched as many 1981 slash movies as we could. We're going to watch as many shot on home video, like shot on tape. I had to make this specific because there's a lot of movies that were edited on tape and a lot of movies that were shot on like this really like advanced TV tape, which I'm not counting. Ugh. Like people who got like camcorders and shot horror movies.
I've seen my share of those, and I don't ever.
No, they're awful. But there's something to them, and Patrick is really into them, and he knows a lot about them. So this was going to be a 2 or 3 parter, and Patrick and I are going to just talk. So I don't know how many movies we're going to cover just yet, but that'll be something fun for the end of the year to bring us into 2021, which again, got to remind you, we'll still be in a pandemic. Please wear your masks and socially distance.
Be safe, you guys.
As of recording this, they announced that they might have a working vaccine. It's not going to be working for a while, guys. Be responsible.
Yeah.
And I love you, and goodbye. I love you too, Kristine.
Is she prettier than me?
No, all my viewers, but I love you, of course, Kristine.
Thank you.
Okay, and goodbye.
Bye.